Good evening, everybody. My name is Angel, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm very happy to be here. This is my first time here, and yeah, I'm excited to be here. So, my sober date is August 15th, 2020. I am a COVID baby. I have a sponsor who knows he's my sponsor. I have the privilege and honor of sponsoring other young men in this program, and I have a service sponsor who I love dearly and keeps me straight. So, I always say I'm not going to spend too much time talking about how it was, and then I end up like rattling off all the things that were. So I'm going to really focus my time and try not to do that tonight. Um, just to so I'm from New Jersey. I'm the interim co-chair for EACYPAA, New Jersey host. If you've ever been to EACYPAA, Eastern Area Conference of Young People Alcoholics Anonymous, it's one of the largest conferences in the States. And it's a fantastic time. If you've never been to a YPA conference, I highly suggest you go. It's life-changing, and it definitely was for me. Um, so I'll spend a little bit of time talking about how I was. I was born in Puerto Rico. I'm from Ponce, and I moved to Elizabeth, New Jersey. If anybody's familiar with Elizabeth, New Jersey, it's the hood. So I didn't grow up with money. My parents did as much as they could to make ends meet. My dad was a truck driver. My mom worked a lot of odd end jobs. She was a babysitter, worked at Burger King. She was the lunch lady at my school. My mom found time to work and be a present mom. She's definitely a superhero to me today. Um, so um, my parents were two people that were like oil and water. Like they were together, but shouldn't have been. They just didn't mix. And there was a lot of domestic abuse happening at home. And sometimes that abuse turned towards me and my brother and sister. My father was never physically abusive towards any of us, but my mother was. Um, and I'm the oldest of three, and I'm a Leo, so I love attention, whether it's negative or positive. And I always got the brunt of that attention. Um, so there was a lot of abuse happening at home. There was sexual abuse happening as well. When I was 8, I was molested by my half brother, who was 18 at the time. And that went on for about a year. Now, I share all these things because when I first recognized that I may have had a problem with drinking, these were the things I would rattle off as reasons why. Well, look at my life. Look at what happened to me. Look. I'm a victim of circumstance. You know, if you had my life, you'd drink too. Now, having had experience in these rooms and having an understanding what an alcoholic is, I know that's not the truth today. Although these things have had an impact on my life, they're not why or the reason that I am an alcoholic. Um, so these things were going on. My first drink was when I was 8. It was at I grew up Catholic, and it was at my oh God, what's the word for it? You know, where you do the sacrament of the Lord. I forget because I'm so far removed from that church, but um, yeah, I remember standing in line for this chalice and just taking the entire chalice of wine and drinking the whole thing. This was shortly after the molestation started, but I remember just living inside of my head and not wanting to. And I remember thinking that whenever my mom drank wine, she seemed to have a really good time. And I just connected the two, and I was like, maybe if I drink some wine, I'll have a really good time. And I proceeded to drink the entire chalice. The priest tried to take it away from me, but I had a death grip on that thing and I wasn't letting it go. I don't remember the taste, but I remember the effect. The effect was something that was addicting immediately for me. Um, and I didn't drink again until I was in college, mostly because I was terrified of my mother. When we got home, she was so embarrassed that, she beat me pretty bad after I threw up on her couch. But, it was the 90s. So her couch was covered in plastic and everything was fine, but she was still pretty upset. And yeah, she didn't react very well to that. And I don't know if it was because of fear or just lack of resources or the people I hung out with, but I didn't drink again until I was in college. And then as soon as I was in college, I kind of let the freak flag fly. College was my party, you know. I drank immediately for effect. I didn't drink to feel comfortable, to fit into a crowd. I drank to get wasted. The first bottle I ever copped on my own was Everclear. I just looked at whatever had the highest percentage and that whatever get me there. And that's the way that I drank. I drank solely for the effect because that was my solution to life. That was how I solved all the things that were happening inside of my body, inside of my head, inside of my soul. Um, so fast forward a couple of years, I drink like this for a very long time. There's some other things, dry goods and other drugs involved, but stick to drinking for the purposes of this meeting. And I uh I carried on for a long time, but I never had any serious consequences. I never had a DUI. I never hurt anyone physically. I never um caught, was never arrested, divorced. And so I couldn't see that I was an alcoholic. I didn't think I had a problem. Although many people in my life were telling me that I did and that I did have a problem, I just refused to believe them. And whenever somebody would point those things out to me, I would immediately victimize myself and say, well, look at all the things I went through. This is why I am the way that I am. If you can't get with it, then get out. I was really, really good at pushing people away. Um, Relationships to me were either a means to an end or a distraction. There was no in between. They had no real meaning for me. And I used people the way that I used alcohol. Surrounded myself with fair weather friends, people who just, you know, drank like I did. So I wouldn't really have to look at myself. And yeah, this went on for a long time. And then COVID hits. And I'm a preschool teacher. Um, as you can imagine, teaching preschool and being an alcoholic isn't exactly like an ideal mix. It's not fun. But I would show up to work completely hammered. Um, and as soon as COVID hit, I was like, yes, freedom. I get to drink on the job now. I can just fill this black thermos that I have with liquor and nobody will know, and teach these kids virtually and nobody will know. Um, and that's what I ended up doing. What became like something that I would do on the weekends or at the end of a workday became around the hour, around the clock, every single day behavior. Started hanging out with a fair weather friend who drank like me and did other things like I did, and we started spending a lot of time together. And I grew up with this person, and I started getting my feelings confused for this person. I had never allowed anybody in. I had never loved anyone romantically because I just never allowed that kind of connection to build or foster. And I started feeling things for this person that I never felt for anyone before, and I felt like I needed to tell them. So one day we're playing Truth or Dare for Loco Pong, and he asks me to tell him something I've never told him before. And I go, "Well, I love you." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I love you too, man." And I'm like, "Nah, like I love you." And he's like, "Dude, I'm straight. Like, we've had this conversation in the past." I'm like, "Everybody's a little gay. Come on, just give it a shot. You never know." And immediately made it about me. Completely ignored the fact that this person was uncomfortable and didn't feel the same way, and that I was trying to pressure them into a situation they just weren't into. Um, Gaslit him into thinking that he led me on, which never happened. And then just, I never experienced heartache before. And so that unrequited love was something that I've experienced a lot of things in my life. My father passed away, um, a lot of people in my family, a lot of close friends passed away, but I've never experienced like heartache like that. And I didn't know what to do with that pain. And drinking, which was my solution for everything, wasn't working for that pain. I had suicidal ideations in the past, but I had never really had a real plan to act on it. And one day I decided to act on it because I just couldn't deal with the pain anymore. And thankfully, I was drinking with a friend, and he recognized that there was something off with me, and he followed me home that night. And thank God he did. Um, he really stopped me from harming myself, and he stayed with me until the early hours of the next day. until I got some help. I told my mom what was going on, and she told me to get in the car, and she took me to Overlook Hospital, and I stayed there for 2 weeks at the mental health uh, wing. And while I was there, they were like, "Well, you got two things going on. We think you're bipolar. We also think you're an alcoholic." And I was like, "Cool. What do we do about the bipolar thing?" I was not ready to face the facts or see the truth. Once I got out of there, I had a plan that I was just going to start drinking again. Like I was itching for it. And as soon as I got out of there, that's exactly what I did. But my mom had enough and she put an ultimatum on me and she said, listen, you either get sober, you attend the IOP they put you in, and you stay sober, or you can't live here anymore. At this point, I had nowhere else to go. I had burned all my bridges. I had no real friends, no real relationships, no money. So begrudgingly, the last time I drank was August 14th, and my sober date is August 15th. But for a while, I stayed out of these rooms of AA because I saw God all over the steps, and I had this huge resentment against anything spiritual. I had a lot of contempt prior to investigation, and I did not want anything to do with a spiritual experience as a solution. So I attended all these different meetings, um, smart recovery and all these other things. And listen, I think that they work for people, but they were not working for me. And I felt myself spiritually bankrupt all over again and having those negative thoughts all over again. And I happened to hop on an old recovery meeting on Zoom, and there was this young man sharing his experience. I was 8 months dry at this point, and an alcoholic without a solution is a crazy, crazy person. And I was definitely a whack job, and I was losing it. And this kid hops on and he says that he's got 4 years sober and he was 20 years old at the time of this call. And I was like, he got sober at 16? There's no way. Like, that's crazy to me. And I was judging him right from the bat, but then I heard him for the first time. I actually heard him and I heard the message I needed to hear. And I got his number after the meeting. Also, God uses your character defects for you sometimes. I thought the kid was kind of cute and I was like, maybe I can get his number for alternate reasons. But it turns out also a straight guy. So that didn't work out the way that I intended it to. But it did in the way that God intended it to. I showed up at that meeting that he encouraged me to go to. It was a young person's meeting. And I walked into this basement and I had this preconceived notion to what it was going to be like. I'm going to walk into this room, it's going to be all these white kids holding hands and praying. And that's exactly what it was. But it was home. They welcomed me with open arms. They embraced me. They loved on me before I could love myself. They gave me a service position immediately. They were like, hey, you want to be our new greeter? And I was like, what do they do? They come to the meeting 30 minutes early and say hi to everybody. And I'm like, that sounds terrible, but okay. Because I was desperate and I was willing to do anything I was asked to do. They asked me to get a sponsor. They suggested I get a sponsor. There was another gay dude in the room. They were like, hey, ask him. And I'm like, okay, cool. I asked the other gay dude in the room. He was like, yeah, I'll take you through the steps. And we started working these steps. And I'm going to fast forward a bit, but I had an experience, and for a while I never thought I would. I had this experience. I understood what an alcoholic was. I understood the phenomenon of craving. I understood that I had an allergy, this abnormal reaction to liquor. And my ideas of what an alcoholic was equated to somebody who had lost everything and this image that I had created in my mind, and it was completely smashed once I read this book, once I had this experience with my sponsor. I couldn't get behind the fact that my life was unmanageable until we read the bedevilments, and my sponsor had me read them in question form and ask myself these things. And I recognized that I was so focused on the extrinsic things, I was completely ignoring what was happening internally. Everything inside my head, inside my soul, inside my mind was messed up. Um, and it was clear to me that my life was unmanageable. But this God thing took me a while to get behind. Um, and I kind of got stuck on my fourth step. Um, and my mom found my fourth step, and she decided to read it because why not? And I remember when she read it, I was angry, and I called my sponsor, and I was like, "How dare she? This is private, it's personal." And he said, "When you get home, I want you to do one thing." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Just listen to her." And that angered me more because I was expecting some kind of sage guru wisdom, and that's what I got. But when I got home, my mom was upset, and it was obvious. She was in the kitchen cleaning to salsa. And if anybody knows Puerto Rican women here, you know when they do that, they're angry. So she was pretty angry. And she came out, and the first thing she asked me was, "Am I a terrible mom?" And the vindictive part of me wanted to say yes. But the other part that came out was no. And that wasn't me. And then she started talking at me and just asking, "What is a resentment?" I said, "A resentment is just something I can't let go of. It's something that I'm feeling over and over again." Um, and as she's speaking at me, for the first time ever, I see my mom for the person that she is, the complete full person, not this picture that I created, not this monster that I created in my past, based off of the experience that I perceived to have had. I saw her for the full person, flaws and all. But I saw her as this woman who was just reaching out, trying to help and be of service to me and not knowing how. And it clicked. And I felt God in that room in that moment. And after that, I was sold. I was like, you know what? I never thought this would happen. I never thought I would see my mom and respect her the way that I do right now and love her the way that I do. And after that conversation, her and I embraced for what felt like hours. And I haven't hugged my mom since I was a kid. And that was the first time I hugged my mom in my adulthood. And my mom's my best friend today. It's because of this program, you know. I want to share this, and then I'll stop talking because I can go on forever. But I had a fifth step experience with my sponsor, and before I had this experience, I was struggling with sharing all these things because I had never told anyone a lot of the things I had written down on this in this notebook. Um, and I was fearful. And fear is a corroding thread that touches every aspect of my life, and it keeps me in inaction and stops me from doing the things I need to do to get better. And I was stalling, and then I went to this YPAA conference called PenCPA, and I remember thinking, I'm going to go to this conference. It's going to be a bunch of young people just acting a fool. And yeah, there was some of that, but there was also so much recovery in that place, in that space. There's this workshop called the Hugs Workshop, which I'm not going to say too much about because if you haven't experienced it, you need to experience it. My committee friends, the members on my committee make fun of me because I always talk about this, but that workshop is my life. There's this line in the book that says the idea of God is in every man, woman, and child. And I didn't really believe that until I had that experience at that Hugs Workshop. I saw God in every person. I felt God in everyone and everything. And it just clicked for me. And after having had that experience, I was so ready to have this fifth step. And I went and had this fifth step with my sponsor and went to Liberty State Park. And we're sitting at the park. It's a beautiful summer day. We're surrounded by butterflies. It's freaking amazing. And as I'm sitting there with him, we get to this resentment about my half brother molesting me. And I'm thinking, how can I find my part in this? Like, what's my part in this? I don't see my fault in this. And I shared with him, oh, I should have told someone sooner. And my sponsor just shook his head no. And he said, no, you were 8 years old. He's like, listen, I'm going to go get a hot dog. I want you to pray on this, and I'll come back after you're done. And so he did. He went off, walked off, got a hot dog. I was starving, so I was a little angry about that. But then I started praying. And as I'm praying, I'm in a meeting, mom. Sorry, guys. As I'm praying, um, I'm praying angrily, and I'm just like, God, like, get me out of my own way because I don't know the answer. And I recognized right then and there um, that the answer was written in this notebook. And I saw time's up, so I'm quickly gonna wrap this up. Um, I had used this and weaponized this and victimized myself over and over and over again. I had created a shield for myself to keep me away from people. I have used it as a weapon to harm others and make them feel sorry for me. But most importantly, I wouldn't let this go when I was harming myself over and over again. And I shared that with my sponsor, and my sponsor cried, and I cried. And we're two queers in the middle of Liberty State Park crying, surrounded by butterflies. It was the gayest moment I've ever had in my life. And it was the most beautiful moment too. Um, so I guess the topic for tonight that I just wanted everyone to speak on is contempt, pride, or investigation. And that's all I got. Thanks, guys.